allows anyone's effort to go to waste. And Sheikh Hassan Hendricks, who passed on last night in the mercy of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, was a person whom, since his passing on through the means of the social media and various other messages we have received, has received great accolades from people who had interacted with him, people who had been with him and struggled with him in his efforts to bring about a revival, and in his efforts with regard to his passion with regard to the community, the country, and of course his commitment to human rights issues throughout the world. And also raising his voice with regard to the trampled people who have been facing injustice and oppression. And who can forget his very fiery oratory, and who can forget his very powerful messages and talks on the Palestinian struggle, and with regard to the difficulties they are facing, and with regard to the oppression they are facing from the Zionist entity. So we have the special program with regard to a tribute to Sheikh Hassan Hendricks. And of course, during the course of the program, we will have different people speaking from different backgrounds with regard to the interaction with Sheikh Hassan Hendricks. I will also add my voice with regard to some of my memories with Sheikh Hassan Hendricks. In the studio today, we have two people who are with me. And of course, we will be speaking about the remarkable achievements and of course, his commitment, his dedication, his life, and some of the lessons of his life. And we hope, inshallah, we will be able to kindle that type of enthusiasm and that type of passion that he had with regard to anything that he had taken up. And one of the remarkable things that I can remember, nearly anything that Sheikh Hassan spoke about, whether it be with regard to the Palestinian situation and the difficulties that they were facing, which of course, we all know that was his special passion that he had with regard to it, or even in recent years, with regard to his research on fiqh of citizenship, that what is the role of Muslims who are in minority situations. And of course, he had a very remarkable understanding with regard to it, and whatever he spoke on, he always spoke on, and he spoke about it with passion. And inshallah, we make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for his family, make it easy for the Muslim Judicial Council, for the community, especially in Cape Town, and may I say not only in Cape Town, throughout the Southern Africa, and in fact, the Ummah throughout the world. We have Ambassador Dengo, who has served as a South African ambassador in various parts of the world, including Syria, Libya, Saudi Arabia. Shaukat Faki, who is associated with South African National Zakat Fund, and of course, the former Auditor General of South Africa. So alhamdulillah, we have people who can share their experience with regard to the interaction and the life of Sheikh Hassan Hendricks. Maybe we could start off with yourself, Ambassador Dengo. What are your reflections and what are your key moments and what are the lessons that we can take from Sheikh Hassan's life?
Well, I initially met Sheikh Hassan when he was a young person in Worcester. His aunt was a prominent advocate for non-racialism and for liberation. And his uncle was a person called Henny Ferris, who had served a long time on Robben Island with the former President Nelson Mandela. And I met Sheikh Hassan, in fact, through Henny Ferris. Henny said to me, come, let me introduce you to one of your co-religionists. Of course, Henny was a different kind of person, a very strong advocate for human rights, a very strong advocate for liberation, and who died in a very strange way when all four the wheels of his car fell off on one day and he fell off the mountain. He was Sheikh Hassan's uncle. Of course, we also had a common mentor, Sheikh Ikramuddin, who had come from Worcester initially and had come to Bosman. So some of the values that Sheikh Ikram had imparted to Sheikh Hassan, it also imparted to people like myself.
Let me just come in here. When I was reading some of the aspects with regard to his life, it was quite interesting that his mother came from a Christian background. I mean, his maternal grandfather was a pastor in Worcester.
Was a Protestant and one of the, what they call in Afrikaans, ouderlinge van die kerk, one of the elders of the church in Worcester as such. And I think what that demonstrated, Sheikh Hassan's non-racialism, non-sectarianism, and is respect for people across the board, whether they be Christian, Muslim, non-believers. But I think his important role was in what you had mentioned earlier, Maulana, his fiqh on citizenship. And I recall him bringing me to Cape Town to speak to the MJC when he was actually dealing with this issue about the fiqh of citizenship. And he emphasized the question that you are primarily South Africans who are of the Muslim faith. And the South African identity was a very, very important part of what he was trying to impart to people. You are South Africans, remember that. I also recall he used to come visit me often in Damascus and in other places. But in Damascus, he used to live with me, him and Sheikh Ibrahim Gabriels and Maulana Ali, sitting, and we used to sit and discuss about the question of primary identity, the question of citizenship, and how people should act in the countries where they do live. And that was an important thing that he brought across. I think his humility is important. He lived in Eisendaal throughout. He lived with the poor people. And some time ago, not too long ago, I in fact phoned you, Maulana, about a concern that I had about people not acting as South Africans. And I phoned him as well. He was not too well. And he said to me, people need to understand that they are South Africans first. That we come from a community that had come through slavery, a community that had come through difficulty. And that history is within our DNA. And we need to relate to that, to the South Africans, and make people understand we're South Africans. And we need to look at non-racialism and not to lose the ethos of non-racialism. The question of sectarianism becomes a problem unless it is handled differently. But also the question of development. How do Muslims play a role in the development of South Africa, of Southern Africa, of Africa, and the world? Of course, he was concerned about the Palestinian issue. And he used to go often to Beirut, to the Quds Foundation headquarters that was there, to deal with the Palestinian issue. And of course, I was then stationed there and interacted with him from that particular perspective.
And of course, that is a very interesting point. I mean, the one point that people find, and may sometimes they bring up this aspect that there is, a contradiction. To me, I don't see a contradiction. Sometimes a person has multiple identities. And of course, a person can have his citizenship and he can be a South African because that is geographical location where he is. In terms of his faith, he's a Muslim. In terms of his ethnicity, he might be an Indian, he might be a Malay, he might be a Xhosa, he might be a Zulu. There is no contradiction in these various identities a person has. And he has to play his role in fulfilling all his identities. And I think sometimes people unnecessarily conflate the issue and confuse the issue when there is no necessity to do so. Shaukat, you also, alhamdulillah, in your own way, you have done tremendous for the sake of the country, for the sake of the community. What are some of your memories with regard to Sheikh Hassan?
Yeah, Jazakallah Mullah. I don't know Sheikh Ihsan that long personally, but I do know that the role he's played in forging a relationship with the South African National Zakah Fund. SANZAF and MJC has got a long-standing relationship, and he's played a critical role in fostering that relationship. If
you don't mind, we'll just break for a little while. I believe that the janazah is about to leave his home in Cape Town. Okay. So maybe we'll be taking footages from that, and we'll come back and speaking about Sheikh Hassan.
Inshallah.
Obviously, what we are seeing on the screens now is the janazah leaving the house of Sheikh Hassan Hendricks. And we all know that the burial in Islam is something that is a very simple procedure. Allah Ta'ala in the Holy Quran says, مِنْهَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ وَفِيهَا نُعِيدُكُمْ وَمِنْهَا نُخْرِجُكُمْ تَارَةً أُخْرَى. from earth have you been created, to earth will you be returned, and from the dust and earth would you be resurrected on the day of Qiyamah. And the aspect of burial in our faith is something which is very simple. We go back, and of course part of the procedure with regard to it is, of course, now you are seeing that the janazah has been taken. The coffin would be inside the coffin that has been created, like, a small, just to make it easy for people to carry it. And alhamdulillah, what we find is that the Muslim Ummah and people would take pride in carrying the janazah. There's great reward with regard to carrying the janazah, and people would be carrying that and taking it to the place where the janazah salah would be performed. And in the janazah salah, we all know that we will be asking Allah Ta'ala for forgiveness for the deceased. In fact, not only for the deceased, in the dua that is recited in terms of the janazah, Allahumma aghfir li hayyina wa mayyitina wa shahidina wa ghaibina wa saghirina wa kabirina wa dhakarina wa unthana. Oh Allah, we ask you for forgiveness for those who are alive, those who have passed on. Allahumma aghfir li hayyina wa mayyitina, those who are present, those who are absent, those who are males, those who are females. And then of course we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when our time eventually comes and no one is going to be spared the aspect of death. وَمَا جَعَلْنَا لِبَشَّرٍ مِّن قَبْلِكَ الْخُلْدِ, says Allah in the Holy Quran, that no human being is going to live in this world forever. أَفَإِن مِتَّ فَهُمُ الْخَالِدُونَ. O Prophet of Almighty Allah, if death is going to overtake you, then who is going to live in this world forever? So everyone is going to pass back, and of course what we're seeing now is members of the Muslim Ummah and the community in Cape Town carrying the janazah, and that is the body of Sheikh Hassan. And we make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive his shortcomings, elevate his status, reward him tremendously for all his efforts that he had done for the sake of the community, for the sake of the Ummah, and his passion and his commitment and his dedication to just causes throughout the world. Normally in Muslim burials, I'm sure most of the viewers might be from the Muslim faith, but those who might not be, people take turns in carrying the body, which is in a casket or something of that sort. And of course the body is in a shroud, and that shroud is a plain white cloth, and that is equal to the king or the pauper, that all are shrouded in the very same calico white cloth to show our equality in front of the Almighty. So there is no pride, there is no arrogance. At the end of the day, we all, we come into this world in a same way, and we all come alone. وَلَقَدْ جِئْتُمُونَا فُرَادًا كَمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ. Allah Ta'ala says, you will come to me alone the way you were born alone. And this is such a great verse of the Holy Quran. So when we go into the qabr, no matter what your previous background is, no matter what it is, you will go and face accountability alone. And what we are seeing now is the janazah leaving, the hearse leaving with the body of Sheikh Hassan. Interestingly, we find that there is the Palestinian flag, which is quite prominent around his house. And of course, it is a testimony to the great sacrifices and the call of Sheikh Hassan, highlighting people towards the Palestinians and they fight and they striving for justice, and of course the unfair treatment and oppression that is meted out to them by the Zionist entity. And we make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward the efforts and also fulfill his voice and fulfill his striving to bring about justice to the people of Palestine. And of course, it was not only his call, of course, as has been mentioned by Ambassador Dengo, that he had an equal passion with regard to the aspect of citizenship and the rights of Muslims, and the role, in fact, rather, and the responsibility of Muslims that they have to play here in South Africa. You might be hearing, and of course there is normally the recital in Arabic of Kalima Shahadat, and of course that is the main aspect of the teachings of Islam, which is Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. We bear witness that there is no one worthy of worship besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is in reality the greatest aspect of Islam and Muslims, that we fear Allah the way we fear no one else. We rely upon Almighty the way we rely upon no one else. And we place our hopes in Almighty the way we place on no one else. And we worship Allah and we worship no one else. Normally, if there is a bigger crowd, then they will take turns to be able to have the honor of carrying the body, and they will keep the hearse at a distance to allow the people who have come to share in the honor or to share in the reward of carrying the body. And because Sheikh is such a prominent person, you can see the crowd of people, and that is why the hearse initially was parked very close to the house, but because of the crowd and the people wanting the honor of carrying his body, we find that there are people now, the hearse is at a distance and people are carrying the body. And of course I can see prominent amongst them the Sheikh Irfan Abrams, the present Amir and chairman of the Muslim Judicial Council, Sheikh Ibrahim Gabriels, who was also the former president of the Muslim Judicial Council, are amongst those who are leading the body towards the hearse and towards the final resting place of Sheikh Hassan Hendricks. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make his resting place one of comfort and one of joy to receive the blessings of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The body will be taken to the place where we also see Muhammad Khaliq Ali, the Secretary General of the Muslim Judicial Council, who is also now on the screen, who is also amongst those who is carrying the body towards the hearse, where it will be taken to a place where the Janazah Salah will be performed. The Janazah Salah is a specific type of prayer, and the purpose of the prayer is to glorify Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to send our salutations upon our beloved Prophet ﷺ, and then to make dua and prayer for the deceased. And of course that is one of the major objectives of the prayer, or known as a Janazah Salah. And thereafter he will be taken to the cemetery and the Qabristan, as it is known in our terminology, where he will be put into the qabr. And normally we put and when he is put into the qabr, he is only left with a shroud, ordinary white piece of cloth that is equal to those who are wealthy, those who are kings, and those who are paupers. So here you find that the hearse is now about to make its way from the house of Sheikh Hassan and move on towards the place where the Janazah Salah will be performed. Sheikh, before we were going, Shaukat, you were saying a few things. We didn't get, Ambassador had spoken some about some of his memories. Yeah. Maybe you would like to just continue with regard to some of your memories.
Sure. Jazakallah, Mulna. Mulna, I was saying, I don't know Maulana Ihsan that long, but he's played a critical role in establishing the relationship that SANZAF has had with the MJC particularly in the Cape. We've had a long-standing relationship, very cordial, and worked together as a team in a lot of projects together, and he's made a significant contribution to the work that SANZAF is doing, and the work predominantly being the champions of the poor, and that was what he was very passionate about, as you've mentioned, and as Ambassador has mentioned. And I got involved with the MJC about 5-6 years ago, and I've engaged with him quite extensively during that period when I was appointed to do a review of the Halal Trust, MJC Halal Trust, and as you know, he was the chairman of the Halal Trust at that point in time. And it was shortly after the big scandal that took place on the MJC regarding the halal certification. And alhamdulillah, again, with the difficult times that they were facing during that period, I must say the way we've engaged with him, bringing out the shortcomings and some of the recommendations that we've made to the MJC in terms of how to address some of the halal issues that they were facing was very constructive. He was very open-minded about getting recommendation, getting our views on these things, and gave us a firm commitment that inshallah MJC will take these recommendations forward. And then of course when I got involved myself with SANZAF, we've engaged with him again and always took guidance, advice from him on how to try and alleviate the issue of poverty and development amongst the needy and the poor. And as has been indicated, he was not, although he is known and he's stamped an authority and he's an icon when it comes to the Palestinian cause and the issues that the Palestinians are facing, his commitment for the local people was equal and equal to none as well.
I think a very important point that you are bringing, while you can be passionate with regard to issues around the world, we just have to be also equally passionate with regard to issues that are surrounding you. Right. You can't have a situation of plenty in the midst of poverty. And of course, these are type of challenges we're facing in South Africa. And of course, it's good to hear from both yourself and Ambassador how Sheikh Hassan played a very important role with regard to some of the challenges facing the people in South Africa. And alhamdulillah. And may we learn from these lessons, because I think as Muslims, we are part and parcel of the fabric of South African society, and we need to play our rightful role. I believe we have other messages depending upon what we have. First, of course, we have a message from Shaheen Ibrahim, who is the chairman of the Oasis Group Holdings, and inshallah.
من نعم الله الجبار قبس من نور المختار وبعزم كان.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. On behalf of our mother, Maryam Ibrahim, the Ibrahim family, the directors of Oasis, our CEO, Adam Ibrahim, and Deputy Chairman Nazim Ibrahim, as well as all our staff, we are deeply saddened about the passing of Maulana Ihsan Hendricks. He was a dedicated scholar and human rights activist. Our entire community will miss his formidable leadership, his compassion and unifying nature. His work at the MJC, his ability to shed new light on social justice and enable dialogue amongst our ummah and amongst communities in South Africa will always be held in high regard. His dedication to the community and to build a stronger and equitable South Africa was one of his main purposes, and which extended to the people of Palestine, campaigning tirelessly for their justice, freedom and liberation. The country is honored to have shared his time with us and will miss his strength, dignity and leadership. I take this time to pass my sincere condolences to his wife Khairunisa, his children, his family, the MJC and the community at large. May the Almighty comfort you at this time and bring peace to your hearts. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And of course, we do have other messages. I suppose we will be taking that during the course of today. But Ambassador, is there any other aspects of his life that you would like to share? I found some of the things that I picked up. One was, of course, after that he went to Newcastle, and he was very greatly motivated and inspired by Maulana Qasim Sema. And of course, Maulana Qasim Sema has done tremendous amount of pioneering work in terms of setting up his Darul Uloom in Newcastle and catering for those people whom you would term today in terms of being maybe not so well off, maybe not so affluent, but of course he he created a revolution in terms of that and did pioneering work with regard to creating imams and ulama for the Cape Flats. And of course, today we have many of those graduates of Darul Uloom Newcastle who are from Newcastle in Cape Town. And of course, he did, of course, the translation of the Quran in Zulu. And in his life interview that he had, Sheikh Hassan spoke about some of the great advisors Muhammad Qasim Samad gave him. And one of it was, don't regard yourself as a scholar only, and take yourself at a pedestal, but remember that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who can take work from you. So being an alim is not in itself a great thing, of course, which of course it is an honor, but a greater honor is that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes work from you in the field of deen. Is there any other point that you would like to maybe perhaps share?
I think, Maulana, what we forget as a community sometimes is the great people and the great people we've had within this particular community. And I think, and I'm saddened that sometimes, that kind of leadership is lost. Maulana Qasim Sima had brought about that kind of ethos without making a big fanfare. He was never on the television screens. He was never on the back posters of anything or any book. But I think a tree is known by the fruit that it bears. And the fruit that bore was the fruit of development, not only from a religious perspective, but people who served within communities, and that they were servants of the people, not only ulama or imma or learned people, but people who became servants of the people who could actually deliver some of the things to people. So when they gave advice, the advice was good advice. It was to actually correct you, but it was not, they truthfully believed in what the right hand giveth, the left hand should not know about. And I think that is the ethos we've lost now. Yes. We've got people who are on the back pages of newspapers all the time, and we've got others who are always celebrated. But some of the people like Maulana Qasim Sima, who were taught people like Ihsan Hendricks, but we also forget the people like Isub Jassat, and the people like Ram Saluji, who played major roles in South Africa. Imam Abdullah Harun, mashallah, is celebrated, but others are not. We need to actually rekindle and celebrate those lives as examples to the rest of the community.
Well, we're getting now, of course, that the hearse has stopped at a place, and from look, what I can see from here is that the janaza is now, the body of Sheikh Hassan has been carried, and people are leading that. And you can hear in the background people who are reading the Kalima Shahadat, as I said, the aspect which conveys the teachings of Islam. And of course, part of also maybe just as we are going and seeing this footage, another person who was very greatly instrumental in Maulana's life was the great revolutionary thinker from India, Sheikh Abul Hasan Nadwi, rahimahullah. And Maulana, in his life, in his speeches, in his talks, in his books, has very, very greatly spoken about Abul Hasan Nadwi. In fact, he said one of the turning points in his life was after the Sabira and Shatila massacre. He read a book by Abul Hasan Nadwi, which he says in one of his interviews about his life, that particular book has always remained by my bedside, giving me inspiration to do work for the sake of the oppressed people of the world. And of course, he was in the process of setting up an Abul Hasan Ali Nadwi Academy in Cape Town. In fact, a land had been purchased, and he was busy setting up that academy to revive and to continue with the revolutionary thinking and vision of Maulana Abul Hasan Nadwi, rahimahullah. If I'm not mistaken, this is yes, it is a masjid.
St. Athens Masjid.
St. Athens Masjid, yes. course, we know that each and everyone has to depart from this world. And as we depart from this world, sometimes we have to reflect and say, what type of legacy do we leave behind? And in one hadith of our beloved Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that many times people take pride in their possessions, but what is his possessions? Whatever he has accumulated and whatever his wealth is, that has been utilized. Whatever his other wealth is, that will be left behind for the heirs. So his material possessions is that which he has utilized in his lifetime, and whatever he has not utilized will be left behind for his heirs. So he's not going to benefit from that thereafter. But his real possession will be that which he has sent ahead of him in terms of the good deeds that he has done. مَا عِنْدَكُمْ يَنْفَدْ وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ بَاقٍ. Says Allah Ta'ala, whatever is with you will be destroyed. But whatever is with Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will remain forever.
There's a lot of space there behind the last row there. Can all the people just move a little bit back?
There are some people who come and we go, and some people who leave a lasting impression in terms of the life that they led, in terms of the messages that they used to impart, and in terms of the way they led their life, in terms of the messages that they constantly used to highlight and live by. And it all depends on the individual. And of course, we all know, as today, throughout the day, we've been hearing pourings of accolades and praise with regard to Sheikh Hassan Hendricks. And may Allah Ta'ala take into account what people have said. And of course, there is a hadith to the effect that, Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had said, when people speak highly about a person, Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala deals with him in accordance with what people are saying about him. And if there is people who speak good about a person, inshallah, Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala will reward him, and Allah Ta'ala will grant him the reward according to what people are saying. And of course, here we are seeing that the janazah has been placed, and I think it is almost time for the janazah prayers. Of course, this is a prayer where we will ask, the Muslim community will ask Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala to forgive and elevate the status, and we ask for forgiveness for the deceased. And of course, it is also one way we glorify Almighty Allah. It is a final type of, situation, or the final rights with regard to leaving a person after he has passed on.
I see Ibrahim Rasool in the crowd.
Please come forward. Can everybody be seated, please?
I suppose in many ways now we're having the live feed of the janazah prayers itself. We will maybe cut off our program here at the studio. Maybe just saying that may Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, whatever Sheikh Hassan had emphasized during the course of his life, the cause of human rights, justice, the Palestinian cause, we should continue striving in the same way, and we make dua that Allah Ta'ala accept his efforts and give us the opportunity and the tawfiq of continuing in his footsteps with regard to some of the legacy that he has left behind.
Wish his family strength.
Inshallah, wish his family strength and wish the Muslim Judicial Council the ability to take in his lessons and also continue with that.
before we start with the formal part of the program, there's a request for the family members, the male members, for them to make their way to the front, inshallah. I see some of them here, I don't think everybody's here. All here, alhamdulillah. Abu Ammar, if he can make his way through to the front in public, and if you can just make some space for him to come through. Jazakumullah khairah. So on behalf of the Hendricks family, the family of Mawlana Ihsan, as well as his family at the MJC, so on behalf of the President of the MJC, Sheikh Khan Abrams, our Senior Council, the Imara, our Executive Committee, our General Majlis, all the ulama, brothers and sisters, we greet you with the universal greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On behalf of our President, we welcome you here this afternoon. And we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for the effort that you have made to pay homage to a dear brother of us all, a person that touched the lives of each and every one of us in one way or the other. Your presence here, as well as your love and your affection that you express about Mawlana Ihsan, is testimony to the caliber of man that he was, to the caliber of human being that he was. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward Mawlana abundantly and grant him the highest place in Jannah. Allahumma ameen, thumma ameen. So again, on behalf of our President, we would like to acknowledge and welcome the leader of the Khoisan, Reverend Edison of the of Kairos SA, as well as other faith leaders and dignitaries, as well as all the ulama and brothers and sisters who have made their way to Cape Town from across the country, as well as many countries abroad. We really, really appreciate your effort that you have made to be here this afternoon to pay homage to our dear brother, departed Mawlana Ihsan Hendricks, rahimahullah ta'ala. Because of the time constraint, there is a strict program that we need to adhere to, inshallah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I've been charged with the responsibility of doing the necessary and making the necessary announcements and calling on the necessary dignitaries. So we call upon the first speaker, the President of UQSA, Sheikh Muhammad Ihsan Tariq, to share some words of nasiha and condolences as well with us all, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairah, falyatafaddal.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم. Our dear and honored respected elders, our beloved teachers, asatidha who are present here, our fellow colleagues and friends of the ulama fraternity, our dear and honored respected President of the Muslim Judicial Council and his deputies, and all our beloved brothers and sisters who are gathered here, as we are gathered in this house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in paying tribute and bidding farewell and salam to our beloved brother Mawlana Ihsan Hendricks. I greet you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Mawlana Ihsan Hendricks was indeed to many of us many things. He was a man who was a profound influence. He influenced us in different ways. Many of us in Ittisal in Gaza, there is the communication that is coming through from the Gaza. Immediately we hand it over to Sheikh Ishaq Talib. There will be a link up, inshallah, in 10 minutes' time. And there'll be a link up in 10 minutes' time with Minister Ismail Haniya, the leader of Hamas in the Gaza. So inshallah we'll be waiting for that. As I was saying, Mawlana Ihsan Hendricks' impact on all of us in different ways. Most of us in the ulama fraternity and as fellow students and as fellow learners, fellow leaders with him, one can reflect on the words of our beloved Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And our beloved Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَنْزِعُ الْعِلْمَ مِنَ النَّاسِ انتزاعا إن الله لا ينزع العلم من الناس انتزاعا إنما يقبض العلم بموت العلماء وكما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. That our beloved Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had said that Allah Ta'ala's design and Allah Ta'ala's law is that He does not take away and extract knowledge from among people, taking away from them knowledge in itself. But the way in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes away knowledge and the ilm is through the death of the scholars, death of the ulama. And Maulana Ihsan Hendricks, for me, I think, as a friend and as a colleague, he represented for me the essence, the epitome of what it means to be a leader in society. What it meant to be an alim, what it meant to be a servant leader, what it meant to be somebody who influenced society, who contributed towards rearing generations to come, what it meant to contribute towards understanding complexities of challenges in society. Maulana Ihsan Hendricks for me represented the epitome and the quintessential leader of an alim, leadership of an alim nature. Maulana Ihsan Hendricks was a profound leader in the sense that his work that he had done locally was enhanced and was finding its impact globally. He had, of the greatest of ulama that Allah Ta'ala blessed the ummah, to walk in the leadership of the ummah today. Maulana Ihsan Hendricks had actually walked in their footsteps directly. We had found Maulana Ihsan Hendricks being a prominent leader on the International Union of Muslim Scholars. I was last week just at a conference in Istanbul, and of the cream of the leadership of the ulama were all asking about him. So you had of our own Asatida, Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, you had Dr. Ali al-Qaradaghi, you had Dr. Ahmed al-Risuni, you had Dr. Bashir Isam, Sheikh al-Salabi, all of them asking about him. And he had that conduit role that he played of bringing the international collective wisdom of our leadership as an ummah to bear for us on the community at the local level. And to add to that, I think he's the template of a leader for us as ulama seated in this masjid and as leaders of all of you and all of us in our different respects, because his knowledge and his understanding had actually propelled him to action. He was a person that represented the epitome and the model of somebody who is an advocate for social justice. And that is the work of prophets. That's the work that prophets did. And in that way, he leaves a great legacy and a great baton for all of us here. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevate him. As the dua is among the Siddiqeen, the Shuhada, the Salihin, the Anbiya. Allah grant him murafaqat Nabiyyina Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam fi a'la jinan al-khuld.
Jazakumullah khairan. Khairal jazaa to Sheikh Ihsan for their words, and I'm sure that all of us could have, obviously we can say so much about Maulana Ihsan. Due to the time constraint, Sheikh, we have to. Jazakumullah khairan. What Sheikh said is so true and sincere, and Maulana deserves all of that and much more. We call on the next speaker, inshallah ta'ala, which is our life president, Sheikh Abdul Hamid Khabir, to inshallah ta'ala address us.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. My dear brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, our guests from all parts of the Western Cape, especially the Boland, I greet you with the peace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. We are here this afternoon to pay homage to one of our great sons of the Western Cape. It is strange but true, but most of the great people that served humanity in the world came from the distant villages far away from the eyes of everybody. And here is our Maulana Ihsan. What a sweet person he was. Nice to be in his company. Humble as he was. And Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, it is his time. Allah Ta'ala has taken him away. But he makes a statement. He makes a wonderful statement. That flag belongs to the people of Palestine. I want you, sometimes I cannot watch the television, see the man sitting on the border on his side of Gaza, and he protests against those who are on the other side, who have taken away the land, taken it away unjustly, and also by the Americans who have assisted, the American Zionists who have assisted the Israeli Zionists to take away our land. Baytul Muqaddas is our land, the Ummah of Islam, giving it away to the Zionists, wal-a'yadu billah. But I have that faith. Whether in my son's time, the daughter's time, or my grandson, my granddaughter, if I'm not there, inshallah, they will walk to Al-Quds. They will walk to Al-Quds. And no aeroplane, no war boats will be able to stop them, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will stop them. That is the statement our Maulana has made. He has gone far and beyond. And I hope that the distance that he has gone in this era and in the area in which he had worked so hard will not come to an end, but it will continue, inshallah. I'm going to get done now. Sheikh Ibrahim, please follow that footsteps. And Maulana Ihsan, there by the Society of the Al-Quds, please continue. And I ask my brothers, support this cause. This cause is not finished. This cause is still a long time. Allah subhanahu wa Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had said that the day will come that the Jews will be running from one place to the other, and they will hide behind a stone, and the stone will say, "Are you a Muslim?" "Yeah, the Jew is behind me." So inshallah ta'ala, with the work which you have done in such a short period, what Muhammad Sheikh Ihsan had spoken about him is but a drop in the ocean. He has done some wonderful work for us. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. As an example, that project that is going on in the road there further up. Further up is a project which he started, alhamdulillah, inshallah. It will be finished, and I recommend that they should call that project the project of Maulana Ihsan Hendricks. While supporting the Muslims in Palestine, let us support our people in our own country also. Jamaatul Muslimin. May Allah Ta'ala forgive us. Just one issue. One issue. We are all Muslims. We say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Is that enough? Is that enough? It's not enough. La budda wal amal. There must be deeds, work that goes, that strengthens that iman between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no ayah in the Quran, no ayah in the Quran where Allah ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, without saying wa'amilu salihat, or something to do with deed which is of a moral standard, whether it be for yourself or whether it be for society. I carry a little card in my pocket. Says I am a South African. That's not enough. I must work for my South Africa. I must work for my South Africa. It is not enough to say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I must work for my Islam. That shahada must be the point of departure for greater things towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, I will end this by saying, Jama'ah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Inna alladhina amanu, verily those who believe, wa amilu salihat, and they do the good deeds, kanat lahum jannatul firdausi nuzula. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them the firdaus. My time is up, and I thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Jama'atul Muslimin. Alhamdulillah. Islam bi khair, alhamdulillah. But work for your deen. Inshallah, Allah ta'ala for the Jannah. Goeie werk zullen doen. Hij was eens kansen, please me, please. Hij was eens kansen, hij staat op en zegt, ik als een moslim eerste. En ik kom van de kooi-familie. Ik kom van die oude mensen, dat zijn die Bushman-familie. Hij heeft zo gezegd. En ik is proud dat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala van mij hidayah gegeven. Dat ik kan wist die persoon wat ik is vandaag. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alamin, Allah ta'ala de dieren van die Jannah voor Amin. Allah ta'ala tussen die familie de vriendschap en onderdanig verbrengen naar hadden, inshallah ta'ala. That's what you are seeing. We are all going that way. We are all going to Allah. We come from Allah. And we will go to Allah. Prepare yourself for that long journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa akhir da'wana. Takbir! Allah!
Jazakumullah khairan jazak to Sheikh Abdul Hamid Kabir for those words. Before I call on our next speaker, just a disclaimer, inshallah, the views expressed aren't necessarily the views of the VOC or the views of the university. The Sheikh Maulana Ihsan Hendricks himself has always made it a point and reminded that our fight is not with groups, our fight is with Zionists and Zionism as a system. So I just wanted to make that clear, inshallah ta'ala. It now gives us a great pleasure and an honor to call on a lifelong friend and a student friend of Maulana Ihsan Hendricks, a very, very close friend of him, Maulana Ahmad Muhammad, the director of the Al-Quds Foundation office in Johannesburg. Studied with Maulana in Darul Uloom Newcastle as well as at Darul Uloom Tabi'a li Nadwati al-Ulama in Lucknow to share some of his feelings and thoughts with us, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, most gracious, most merciful. Indeed, brothers, sisters in Islam, today is a sad day for the community of Cape Town, not only Cape Town, but the whole world. Gaza is crying. The whole of Gaza is crying. I was instrumental with Maulana Ihsan with the Africa 1-8 convoy. The people of Gaza love Maulana Ihsan. The people of Gaza cannot take it that today a great leader, Maulana Ihsan, is no more. He was the voice of the Palestinian people. He was our Sheikh al-Aqsa in South Africa. It is indeed emotional for us today, as I have traveled many places, many countries, and throughout South Africa. And Maulana Ihsan was the one, he used to stand and make the bayans and the motivation and explain to people the responsibility of the Ummah. I come a long way with Maulana Ihsan since 1982, where we started in Newcastle, and then we traveled and we studied in India. It was challenging times. It was not an easy road for Maulana Ihsan. But Maulana Ihsan was always a dedicated person. There were great ulama in that time and up to today that played a vital and important role in the life of Maulana Ihsan. Like our Ustad, Maulana Abu Hassan Ali al-Nadwi. Therefore, many of you will recall Maulana would always quote from the kitab of Maulana Abu Hassan Ali al-Nadwi, ماذا خسر العالم بانخطاط المسلمين. Maulana actually memorized the kitab. Therefore, Maulana was that person who got recognized who is a leader. Maulana was a person who believed in bina'ur rijal, building men. Maulana was the man who built leaders. In South Africa and every corner of South Africa, there are many leaders that came out of the hands of Maulana Ihsan Hendricks. Last night when I heard the news that my dear friend, my brother, my mentor has passed on, we immediately got into our transport and we hit the road to Cape Town. As I was traveling to Cape Town, one of the great youth leaders of the Jamiat al-Ulama of South Africa said, Maulana, pass our condolences to the family and to the people of South Cape Town. We have a great leader. We have lost a great leader. Therefore, tell the family a special thanks to the family. It was Maulana Ihsan Hendricks who chose me to be a representative of the Jamiat al-Ulama on the Africa 1-8 convoy. And when I embarked on the journey on the Africa 1-8 convoy, everything opened, and today is a great leader in Johannesburg, Maulana Bilal Bayat. Many people, wallahi, brothers and sisters in Islam, when Maulana passed away, when Maulana left this world, and we open our social media, and we see how many people describe the greatness of Maulana Ihsan Hendricks, wallahi, we will not be able to make justice in describing who Maulana Ihsan really was. Maulana Ihsan was a person, and many a times, till late at night, remember that Johannesburg and Annandale was the second home for Maulana Ihsan. He opened so many doors for ulama in South Africa, nationally and internationally. Maulana Ihsan had the power to unite this ummah. Many great ulama looked up to Maulana Ihsan that he was the hope to unite the ummah. Brothers and sisters in Islam, we have lost a great scholar. We have lost a great man. We have lost a visionary. We have lost a great freedom fighter who understood what was apartheid in South Africa, and therefore Maulana stood for the liberation of Masjid al-Aqsa and for the people of Palestine. On behalf of the family, as I was a close friend of Maulana, a brother, went to many struggles together, we asked the community of South Africa, if there was any shortcomings in Maulana Ihsan, if there's anything that Maulana did to any person, we ask maaf. And if there is anything that Maulana Ihsan owed to any person, we ask and we appeal, come forward so that we can sort out those things, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant our side the highest state in Jannah.
Ameen.
We say Jazakumullah khair al-jazaa to Maulana Ahmad Muhammad for those heartfelt words and words of truth. Allah knows best. We, inshallah ta'ala, now call on the person that will be. All right. There was an initial intention that one of Maulana's brothers would address us, but obviously it is quite understandable. Quite understandable that they're very emotional, as is all of us, and Maulana Ahmad actually also fulfilled that particular responsibility on behalf of the family of Maulana Ihsan Hendricks. Jazakumullah khair al-jazaa. So inshallah ta'ala, the next person that will be addressing us for a short time is Sheikh Ibrahim Gabriel on behalf of the EXCO of the MJC.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وإمام المتقين سيدنا وحبيبنا Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Respected ulama and all the people of Cape Town and South Africa, it's very difficult to speak without tears at the demise of such a great leader, Maulana Ihsan, and a person that was so close to my heart. A few days ago, Maulana asked me to come to the hospital, and he was crying bitterly. And he said to me, Sheikh Ibrahim, in Arabic, أنا أريد فقط أن أؤكد بأنني أحبك في الله. I just want to confirm and let you know that I love you dearly for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'm not going to be long because we run against time. But there's two more things that I want to say. We mustn't be deceived here in this beautiful city of Cape Town if some people speak bad about the ulama. Because my experience is that the people of Cape Town, they love the ulama. And you can see it today. And you can notice from last night on the Voice of the Cape until this moment, people all around Cape Town, South Africa, in Palestine, in London, all over, they're making dua for Mawlana Ihsan. Because they love him, and they love the leaders. And may Allah grant that this can continue, that the lovely people of Cape Town, Allah, I've traveled many countries in the world, but Allah has blessed us in this city of Cape Town. We've got beautiful people in Cape Town. And we mustn't spoil Cape Town. And we must continue to respect one another and love one another purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as I've just said now that so many people have made dua for Mawlana Ihsan. But oh Allah, there's one dua that I'm going to make, Ya Allah, and you are the list of all du'as, that the day when Palestine is going to be liberated, that Allah, Ya Allah, I ask thee to show Mawlana how the people in Jerusalem is going to celebrate, how the people in Masjid Al-Aqsa is going to celebrate, how the people in the Gaza is going to celebrate their freedom and liberation, because that is what Mawlana Ihsan deserves, because it's work for that liberation. Jazakumullah khairan. And from our side, from the MCC side, we love you all dearly for the sake of Allah, and we appreciate your respect and love for the ulama. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad, walhamdulillah rabbil alamin.
Jazakumullah khairan jazaa to Sheikh Ibrahim for those heartfelt, teary words. Allah Ta'ala accept from Sheikh, inshallah. We just received a communication from the Gaza by SMS. Unfortunately, due to technical problems and issues on their side, they will only be able to connect with us in half an hour's time, which obviously does not benefit us in terms of the proceedings here this afternoon. So unfortunately, we won't be able to bring that link up to you live from the Gaza. The last person to speak, inshallah, or second last person, should I say, is a dear friend of Maulana Ihsan Hendricks as well, a person that Maulana Ihsan saw as a consultant on political issues within South Africa and beyond. That person in the form of Ambassador Ibrahim Rasool. So we call upon him, inshallah, to make his way to the front and to address us for, inshallah, 5 minutes.
One thing we is what you are tuned into. This is the live proceedings of the funeral of the late Maulana Ihsan Hendricks. And I want to welcome to our listeners of Channel Islam International all the way in Johannesburg. So yes, the ex-Premier Ibrahim Rasool will be taking the podium in the next few seconds and delivering.
President of the Muslim Judicial Council and all the ulama who are present from all bodies, from all walks of life, from all over the country, leaders of faith, leaders of our community, leaders of our institutions. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh, and good afternoon. I sit here and I know that we are going to go through a profound loss as a community of Cape Town. We have not only lost knowledge, we have lost intellect, we have lost intelligence, we have lost strategy, and we have lost direction. But Allah has blessed the southern tip of Africa in Cape Town with an abundance and a long line of leadership from the ulama and from all walks of life. And we are sure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decided that Maulana Ihsan has done in his short life what others struggle to do in an entire lifetime of 100 years. We must let him go because he has done his job and has passed the baton to all of us to continue this work, as Sheikh Abdul Hamid has exhorted us to carry on. I think back and I wonder that in the 17th and the 18th century, if there had been a Muslim Judicial Council, its president would probably have been Tuan-Guru Qadi Abdul Salam. He had described Cape Town in that era as Darul La'na, the accursed abode, because colonialism had enslaved our people. The authorities had banned Islam. Practicing our faith was forbidden. And that is the background you will not appreciate today if you do not understand what Darul La'na, the accursed abode, was then. I was fortunate that I grew up in a community led by an illustrious line of ulama and clergy. I was as the call of Islam in the offices of the Muslim Judicial Council when Sheikh Nazim, may Allah have mercy on his soul, when he was leading us in the final straight against apartheid and joined the Muslims into the broader liberation struggle of the UDF, the ANC and all liberation movements. I was fortunate that a young man came back from studies and took over the presidency in the name of Sheikh Ibrahim Gabriels and took our community and welded it into the citizenship of South Africa and made sure that we took our place at the table of the political decisions of this country. I was then fortunate that following him was Maulana Ihsan, who took this community that was just emerging and finding its way and globalized us. He put us into the vision of an entire world. He connected our struggles with the struggle of Palestine, and wherever there was injustice, that was where Maulana Ihsan's voice took the example of the Cape Town Muslims. And now we stand here and we know that Sheikh Irfan has the responsibility to take this growing diversity amongst our Muslims here and to weld us into a new unity that will see us thrive more and more as we go forward. That is the line of confidence that we have, and that is the job that Maulana Ihsan had done. I want to say to you that Maulana Ihsan was not interfaith because he put on the coat of interfaith. He was interfaith because he had a Christian grandmother who took him to madrasa every day. Maulana Ihsan was not a son of the soil and loved the other cultures. He loved the other cultures because he was proud of his Khoisan heritage himself, when others were looking for white parentage and French parentage and Dutch parentage. He was proud of where he came from. Maulana Ihsan was not political because it was fashionable and safe. He was political because he grew up in Worcester, the family of Henny Ferris, one of the first colored leaders to join the liberation movement. And he was proud of that. And that injustice made him the political leader that he became, not only in South Africa, but all over the world. That is why today there are du'as and salatul janazas being performed wherever the oppressed gather, wherever the oppressed suffer. They remember Maulana Ihsan as their champion and their link to the land of justice in South Africa. Maulana Ihsan, if anyone, lived up to the description of knowledge in the Quran, ulul ilm qa'iman bil qist, people of knowledge standing on justice. We have many people who have knowledgeable degrees. They call themselves all kinds of titles, mufti this and mufti that. But if they don't stand on justice like Maulana Ihsan has always stood on justice, their knowledge is there for their own edification and not for the benefit of the ummah and not for the benefit of the nation and not for the benefit of the world. That is what Maulana Ihsan has been able to do. And so we pray, inshallah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him abundantly. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put him in the highest place in Jannah, inshallah. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala let his example reverberate across the world wherever there is injustice, inshallah. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make him replicate himself in all of us, that every alim that grows up in this Cape Town and takes leadership in our community will always be what Maulana Ihsan has often been, and that is an epitome of justice, of peace, of virtue, and of character, and of integrity. That is what we need, and let us all look to Maulana Ihsan so that we don't look to exotic and celebrity leaders from all over the world. We must love who we are. We must love who comes from us. We must love the struggle of 350 years that he is the representative of, and not look for exotic people to lead us. We have led ourselves in the most difficult days, and that is what we stand for. And so, if I can misuse a verse from Surah Al-Rahman and give myself comfort, Hal jaza'ul ihsan illa al-ihsan, that the reward for ihsan is only goodness. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala live up to that promise and reward Maulana Ihsan only with ihsan. Jazakallah khair wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
What you are tuned into, this is a live broadcast coming to you from Masjid al-Salam.
Jazakallah khairan jazaa to Ambassador Ibrahim Rasul for those telling nasiha. Allah Ta'ala accept from inshallah. We will inshallah go straight over into the proceedings of the Salatul Janazah. The Iqamah will be made by Sheikh Abdullah Awaluddin, inshallah. Then the Salah will be led by the Qadi of the Embassy and the Amir of the Imara, Sheikh Muhammad Amin Faqir. The Salawat will be recited by Yasin Harris. And the Dua, inshallah, after that will be made by our President Sheikh Al-Fan Abrams.
Can we strengthen the song, Jama'at Muslimin? الصلاة على هذا الميت الحاضر، الصلاة رحمكم الله. فاعتبروا يا أولي الأبصار. الله أكبر. 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 السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم.
الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيد الأولين والآخرين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم اغفر له وارحمه وأسكن في الجنة. اللهم اغفر له وارحمه وأسكن في الجنة. اللهم اغفر له وارحمه وأسكن في الجنة. وتجاوز عن سيئاته واحشره يا الله مع النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين. وحسن أولئك رفيقا. ذلك الفضل من الله وكفى بالله علينا. اللهم باعد بين خطاياهم، اللهم باعد بين خطاياهم كما باعدت بين المشرق والمغرب يا ارحم الراحمين. اللهم لا تحرمنا اجرهم ولا تفتنا بعدهم، واغفر لنا يا الله وله وللمسلمين والحاضرين اجمعين. يا ايتها النفس المطمئنه
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين
And after the Makrana, if all the men are invited to come and eat here at the masjid, inshallah, and the ladies at Maulana's house, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
نبديك يا أقصى بالروح بالدم 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 نبديك يا أقصى بالروح.
لا إله إلا الله
لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله.
Tell them about that. It's okay.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to apologize. Maulana Bam had to leave the studio of ITV in Johannesburg. I am now anchoring on his behalf. Just to give you a brief feedback on what transpired in Cape Town. They've just concluded the Janazah Salah at the St. Athens Mosque. Okay, they've just completed the Janazah Salah at the St. Athens Mosque. And there were some speeches by people who have known Maulana Ihsan for a number of years and have shared with us the kind of legacy that Maulana has left behind. And the Janazah is now being taken through to the Qabristan, where Maulana will be laid to rest, inshallah. So we will be also concluding our program here from the ITV studio in Johannesburg shortly. But before we do that, I'd like to go back to Ambassador Muhammad Dango and ask him if he's got any concluding comments to make just before we take a few clips of some of the speeches that they would like to transmit by air as well, inshallah. Muhammad?
I think just to comment on what some of the speakers have said, trying to highlight the life and celebrating the life of Maulana Ihsan. It is important that Sheikh Ibrahim had pointed out that the opposition is to Zionist abuses and not to Jewish people. Sheikh Ibrahim pointedly said that. I think the second thing that was highlighted by Ambassador Rasul was the fact that Maulana Ihsan acknowledged his history coming from Africa and didn't look for his white parentage. He looked for his Khoisan history and found pride in that. And I think that is important in the South African context. When we go forward, that people are equal. There are no people that are lesser than other people. And that was the lesson that Maulana Ihsan had tried to bring about and try to inspire and inculcate within the community of South Africa.
Jazakallah, Ambassador, for that. We'd like to now go across through and just put some sound clips of some of the messages that's come through from people in Cape Town. I'm going to hand over to the studio again.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Alhamdulillah, we are standing here by the residence of Maulana Ihsan Hendricks, Allah yarhamhu. We are really indeed sad. It is a great loss not only for Cape Town but South Africa and beyond to lose this giant of a person in knowledge, in wisdom, and being a mujahid and a champion for the liberation of Al-Aqsa and the Palestinian people. So on behalf of the Imamat of Masjid Al-Quds, the Board of Trust and the Executive Committee, I wish to convey my condolence to the family, and we pray that Almighty Allah open the doors of heaven for his soul and that Allah grant him Jannatul Firdaus, the highest of paradise. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
My herinnering van Maulana kom back many years ago, from Paul, maybe 30 years ago. I know him personally very well. His family also, and it's a sad day, it's a baie hartseer dag vandag. En ons het 'n groot man verloor. Groot man, ons weet in dien and knowledge, everything. And then one thing also, now for a couple of years, I had to mention it, ek het dit vir jou gesê, I'm going to miss him every Friday after Jumat. For the last couple of years, we ate at one place together after Jumat. We all together so lekker gesels and so on. And I went to visit him when he went into hospital, and Allah took him away. There's no memories, especially us in the Bulan area. I represent now Paul, especially in the area where he was all his life, half of his life was in Worcester. He grew up in Worcester. And I think his first imam is a mosque was in Wellington, part of Paul. That's how I know him very, very well. Alhamdulillah, that's all I can say. Don't want to say a lot, but alhamdulillah, that's all. Ons gaan hom mis.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We will be concluding our program now. And on behalf of myself, Muhammad Dango, Ambassador, former Ambassador of Syria, and Maulana Bam, we'd like to thank you for paying attention to this proceeding that's taken place and the Janazah Salah that took place in Cape Town. From the studios of ITV, we greet you with the universal greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah kullu khair.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
من نعم الله الجبار قبس من نور المختار وبعزم كالنهر الجاري نسلك درب العلم ونعمل قبس إصلاح وإخاء علم إيمان ودعاء.
The death rate in the Eastern Cape of South Africa is 11.9 to every 100,000 children. The Eastern Cape province remains the poorest province with the highest levels of unemployment. Join our drive against malnutrition and death due to starvation. Support our certified empowerment programs designed to free individuals from poverty. Support the Al-Fida Foundation at www.alfida.co.za or contact us at 041 484 1288. The Al-Fida Foundation.